This is my daughter Philomena's all-time favorite pasta preparation. She is obsessed with this dish. She orders it anytime we take her out to eat, and it has become something that I have to make on the regular, but have to is interesting because I love this dish. I'm going to show you a spicy version today. So if you're making it for kids, just leave the Calabrian chilies out of this dish. But if you're making it for you, I highly recommend leaving them in. So the first thing I'm going to do is take, you could do two. I'm going to start with one. This is like a decently large onion. I don't want an overwhelming onion taste. Again, I started making this because it's my daughter's favorite dish and she doesn't want like a huge onion flavor, but you can add more if you want to. And then I'm just going to put a quick slice on here. Getting your slices pretty thin, but do what feels natural. We're actually going to sweat these down in a bit of butter. Actually, let me get the butter going. You guys know what butter looks like, right? Butter in the pot. Melt butter. Full disclosure, I had my cloth out, my wet cloth, to make it so I wouldn't cry when I was cutting onions, and it looked ugly, so I threw it away. Now I'm suffering the vanity of that move. Anyway, what you are going to do here is cook this mountain of delicious onions down in about 4 tablespoons of butter, which is what I just dropped into this pot. Once the butter gets nice and foamy is when that is going to happen. And the trick of cooking the onions and garlic, onions really low and slow for a long time, is to really let the onions concentrate their flavor without getting a lot of color. We're not looking for like caramelized onions here, which would also be delicious. We want pretty pale blonde onions. Gone is their liquid, sweetened and intensified is their flavor. Then we're going to add a little garlic, and then we're going to add the cream right into this pot, puree it all together, and it's going to form this like richly intense, flavorful base for the sauce, kind of like a flavor booster for your tomato sauce, into our pot with these onions. This, unfortunately, is not a recipe that's like, bam, bam, boom, done. Some recipes are simple but require a little bit of patience. This is one of those such moments where you've got to let the onions go over like a medium heat. Again, we're really not looking for color here. We just want to give them time to sweat and bathe in a bath of butter. Can we get that on a t-shirt? I'm just looking to be here and sweat and bathe in a bath of butter. Can you please leave me alone? I'm an onion. And what was I talking about here? We just want to let the flavor concentrate. And again, get rid of some of that liquid that your onions hold on to that can water down the flavor. This sauce is kind of magical in that it feels like it takes the most concentrated flavor bomb of every ingredient being incorporated and marries them together in a beautiful, creamy, luscious, smooth, and slightly spicy smoky, because of what we're adding with chilies, sauce. One thing that I am doing is I'm going to let the onions sweat a little bit before I add the salt. I will add the salt after like 2 minutes or so to release even more water from the onions. It's like we're just really putting it through the ringer. Let's work on the other stuff while this is going. I have here a head of garlic. And I venture almost all pasta sauces need some garlic to really be as beautiful as they possibly can be. I'm going to use 3, maybe 4 cloves of garlic. And I'm just going to grate these into the onions sort of towards the end of their cooking process. Again, you don't want the onions to burn. You really don't want your garlic to burn, or it will destroy the entire flavor of this dish. Give them just a gentle smish. Just want to show you one thing. So see all that steam coming off? That's a good sign. That's what we want. All the water going away. All of our onions getting nice and saucy and flavorful in that butter. Spread it out, making sure you're using a pan with as wide a surface area as you can find is important, because it's going to help you evaporate as much liquid as possible, as quickly as possible. Oh, getting a little bit of color, which we don't really want. It's not like the end of the world, but you can see just a couple pieces are getting that little bit of golden brown happening. Normally, under normal circumstances, that would be very welcome, but we don't want any texture on these. We really want them smooth and velvety so that they puree perfectly into our sauce. Onions are softening. Color is not much. We're very happy. Let's add a little salt to our onions now that they have given up most of their first phase of water. Going in with about a teaspoon, maybe a little more, of our kosher salt. And then I'm just going to stir that up. Okay, just to show you one thing, which is that if your onions start to brown or they look like dry and a little tight in the pan, you can add just a splash of water, which I did. Not a ton, but come see how sort of creamy and frothy it's starting to look. That water helps to slow down the cooking process. It helps to encourage this softening effect with the onions that we're looking for. Again, we're just hoping to get them really as liquidy and broken down as possible before we puree them. So look at how smooth and creamy and soft these are already looking. That's exactly what we're going for. The extra water that I added has evaporated off. These have been going for like 12-15 minutes. I'm going to grate in our garlic cloves now. And this is a good time to drop your heat even a little bit lower, more on that medium low angle. And I am just going to grate these over a microplane. You can definitely mince some last cloves. So I'm just going to do the 3 cloves. These are bigger than they looked. And there's plenty of delicious garlic flavor coming through. And just give that a quick stir to distribute it. I let that onion go for about 15 minutes. Added the garlic, let that go another minute or so. We have some super luscious, creamy looking softened onions happening here. I'm adding a cup of heavy cream. Ideally, your cream should be room temperature so it's not going to disrupt this cooking process. Let that cream pick up any flavor at the base of the pan. At this point, the sauce is all sort of the same temperature. We can finish that up. I don't need to cook the cream at this point because it is going to drop into the pasta sauce and continue cooking there. I really just want it to soak up all this yummy flavor with the onions. Honestly, you could just put the cream, as long as it's room temperature or warm ideally, right into the blender, but this looked better. In that pot that we have, the same situation, we just got dirty. We're trying to minimize cleanup here. Going in with like 4 tablespoons of lovely olive oil. And to that, we are going to add some of our spices that we're interested in. We're going to do some smoked chili flakes, just a few of those, teaspoon. A little bit of oregano. This is optional. You don't need the oregano if you don't want it. I already have salt in the onion blend and salt in the pasta water, so we don't need to have any more salt going on just yet. Pasta water is coming up to a boil, which means I'm ready to drop in my penne, which wants to cook for like 11 minutes. So we're going to pull it out at 9 minutes. Pasta going into heavily salted water. There are going to be a lot of us eating tonight, if I had to guess. Give this a quick stir. Now, one thing I do like to do, especially in sauces like this, where the pasta water becomes part of the building blocks, is I go pretty shallow on the pasta water, and that is helpful for concentrating the starchy, salty flavor that the water takes on from cooking the pasta that you're then going to use as part of building this sauce. Come and see the frying of the herbs, the frying of the spices. These chili flakes that I popped in here are less spicy than they are smoky. It's really about that like smoky sweet heat kind of here. However, when I had the crushed Calabrian chili peppers, it'll be a different situation. But come and see. You can see the color coming out. The oil is starting to bring out the flavor of that oregano and that chili flake. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh yes, it's happening. I can smell the situation going on now. You know, just a minute or two of letting these spices fry. I'm gonna go in with like a half tube of tomato paste here. And that's just beautiful concentrated tomato flavor. And we're just smoothing that around to pick up all that flavor and toast up this tomato concentrate. Woo! Yes, ma'am. 2 hands cooking. Now is a great time to add in my chili flake. Oh man, Philomena's gonna freak out that I'm making this and it's not her favorite way. I'm gonna have to make another batch. I'm going in with a heaping 2 tablespoons of chili flake, guys. Oh, it's gonna be spicy and beautiful. And you can see the tomato paste has already turned this wonderful rusty red color. That's all those sugars caramelizing in the tomato paste. Maximum flavor happening for you right here. Let's give this pasta a quick stir. Make sure nothing's sticking to the bottom. We want to slow this cooking down just a little bit so that it has time to concentrate. Oh, this is a highly controversial moment, guys. We are going to add a little more than a teaspoon of sugar. This is unheard of, outrageous, unthinkable. Don't do it if you don't want to do it, and especially if you're using like, gorgeous sun-ripened perfect tomatoes, you probably won't need it. But if you are using even slightly acidic tomatoes, it goes a long way. In with crushed tomatoes. Wah! No. I love this shirt. And you could definitely, we've been working hard to keep this sauce really smooth and creamy. If you want to just use crushed tomatoes, you totally can. But I'm a big fan of when it's made by hand, show me it's made by hand. When I make it by hand, I want you to know. So I kind of like this hand-crushed texture that this provides. And I am leaving behind some of this liquid. I might add it later. I haven't decided yet. Stirring the tomato, breaking up any larger pieces that I see. Then, now that this is all incorporated, I'm going to add the namesake in this dish, the vodka. So the vodka is really here to help emulsify the sauce, make it thick and glossy and beautiful. You can definitely use wine here. Wine brings its own flavor. I think the point of the vodka is really that it lets all the other flavors here have their moment in the sun. But if you had red wine or something like that, it just wouldn't be pasta alla vodka. It would be penne alla vino. Nobody's complaining about that. Okay, 1/3 cup of vodka of your choosing. Don't tell my husband I stole his. And I'm going to bring this up to a boil at this point because I want that vodka really to cook off and just help us bring together and marry all the elements of this sauce. After it comes to the boil, I will drop it back down to a simmer, and that is when I will add our delicious creamy onion mixture. Let's come to a boil. Let's check on this pasta. How are we doing? Okay, so the pasta is happily boiling over here. I have these kind of thin rigatoni shapes. You could do pachheri, which are those like bigger sort of finger shapes. You could do penne. Any tubular pasta is beautiful because it's kind of that fun surprise moment, or the pasta sauce is coating the outside of the noodle, but it's also tucked on the inside, so you get extra, like double layer of flavor. Think of all that extra surface area on the inside. I want these to go about 9 minutes to make sure there is still plenty al dente for when I finish cooking them in the sauce. Let's grab a nice solid mug of the salty, starchy pasta water. And our strainer, which you always have ready in the sink before you try to drain your pasta. Give this a quick stir, dropping it down back to that medium. I've been using my spoon also just to kind of break up any little guys I see that are too big for our liking, but these look pretty delicious. And pasta is drained, sitting there nicely. Time for the creamy, oniony oh, please come watch the swirl. Please come see what is happening here. Now at this point I don't want this sauce to come back up to the boil anymore because it has that cream in there. I want it to stay luscious and smooth and velvety and chilly and spicy and smoky and salty and sweet from that blasphemous pinch of sugar that we added. And now we're just going to let this simmer like another 10 or 12 minutes until all the flavors have come together and are coating the back of my spoon beautifully. I could have put the pasta in a little bit later. I kind of jumped the gun on that. I was hopeful that we would be ready to eat sooner, but we're going to take our time. It's going to be okay. If you are really a stickler for having it be perfectly creamy smooth, throw it back in the blender after it just chills down just a little bit. But I actually love this. It's exactly the texture that I like best. So you can see that it is in fact a deliciously adult spicy alla vodka sauce. Before all the liquid is gone, I'm going to take our pasta noodles and drop them in, and they still have a little bit of their starchiness left on them. And then I'm going to add in just a touch of that reserved pasta water that we saved, which will grow the sauce again a little bit. So again, like every time we're cooking it down, I'm adding, call it half a cup to begin with. Every time we cook down the sauce, we concentrate the flavor again. So I'm adding back in a little bit of this liquid, which is going to help bulk the sauce, finish cooking the noodles, carry the flavor of the pasta sauce into the noodle, so you get that flavor embedded in all layers of this dish. The noodles, again, are just going to finish that last cook in this saucy goodness. We're going to reduce the sauce ever so slightly. We're going to serve it up with a generous sprinkle of Parmesan cheese. And then it's time to eat. Keep stirring. Don't forget about this guy. This wants to be loved and connected with before you get ready to eat, because this little bit of stirring is going to help bond that sauce to the noodle, finish that cooking process, thicken it up, and make it such a glorious plate to stick your fork into. Let's taste. Make sure it's completely ready to serve. The silky slip on the noodle. The noodle is perfectly al dente. That little hint of sweetness in the sauce is going a long way. The spice, the creaminess. Who am I kidding? Why am I even bothering to serve it out of this pot? I just want to stand here and enjoy it like this. Get yourself some fresh grated Parmesan, unless you forgot. And then get yourself some pre-grated Parmesan. Let it go. Make it rain with some Parmesan. Think about all the pasta you've had before that was nowhere near as decadent and indulgent and perfect looking as that. We took our time and we sweat those onions. We added that garlic, put all that cream in, pureed it, made the pasta sauce, made the noodles, combined it all together, treated ourselves to a gorgeous plate of pasta. And it's worth it. Worth it. So worth